They were social media's ultimate military love story, KD and Tametria, a couple whose bond was forged in discipline, devotion, and God. From their matching fatigues to their viral family moments, they embodied strength, unity, and black excellence in uniform. But beneath the polished surface, a storm had been quietly brewing. And one unthinkable discovery would detonate everything, turning a respected soldier into a fugitive, and a wife into a corpse. How does a man trained to protect his country become a danger to the very family he swore to love? What do you do when betrayal doesn't come from an enemy, but from the one who sleeps beside you? Before we dive into this gripping case, hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling stories of love, betrayal, and the secrets that tear people apart. Before the blood, before the headlines, and long before the final gunshot shattered everything, there was a picture-perfect life. One that Tametria Bell carefully curated and presented to the world like a glossy magazine spread. She wasn't just a military wife, she was a brand, a presence, a name whispered in prayer groups and influencer circles alike. With nearly 300,000 loyal followers hanging onto every word, every scripture, every filtered smile, Tametria moved through the digital world like a woman who had it all. Her Sundays were reserved for scripture, her reels filled with tender moments, little Kingston laughing in the kitchen while she baked cookies in matching pajamas, KD walking through the front door in uniform to surprise her with roses after deployment, or softly spoken affirmations about obedience, love, and staying in divine alignment. She was the face of modern femininity wrapped in old-school values. A brand ambassador for beauty products and modest fashion lines, Tametria's DMs were filled with women asking for marriage advice, parenting tips, prayer circles. She answered like a big sister. Warm. Confident. Virtuous. And her man? Her man was the definition of protection. KD Bell wasn't just a soldier, he was a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army with 3 overseas deployments under his belt, a Bronze Star, and the kind of command presence that made younger soldiers stand up straighter when he entered a room. He had a jawline like granite, hands scarred from years of service, and eyes that softened only when Tametria or Kingston entered the frame. He didn't post often, but when he did, it was with purpose, a photo of Kingston asleep on his chest, a throwback to the first time he held his son, or a clip of Tametria singing gospel while braiding her hair in a silk robe. KD's followers admired his discipline, his loyalty, his seemingly unshakable faith. Together, they were magnetic. Untouchable. The couple everyone wanted to be or be blessed by. They did interviews about love and faith. Hosted relationship panels at churches. Renewed their vows on a beach in Tulum. Every smile seemed permanent, every glance laced with adoration. There were no cracks. No whispers of trouble. Just a black couple in love, in uniform, in sync. They were black excellence, hashtag and all. But the thing about picture-perfect lives is that they're often built on carefully cropped frames. And just beyond those borders, out of focus, hidden from the followers and the affirmations, was a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. While the world saw devotion and discipline, behind closed doors, a secret had already begun to rot the foundation of Tametria and KD's seemingly perfect union. It traced back to a man no one ever suspected, Josiah Dorsey. He wasn't just a friend, he was blood in everything but name. KD and Josiah had met in middle school, 2 boys from the same South Dallas neighborhood who shared everything, basketball courts, barbershop chairs, dreams bigger than their zip code. When KD enlisted, Josiah stayed behind and made something of himself. He opened a barbershop, started a mentorship program for young black boys, and became the kind of man mothers in the community trusted. His smile was warm, his words sharp, and his loyalty, at least publicly, was unquestioned. To Tametria, he was Zion. Kingston called him uncle. He was at every birthday party, every cookout, every minor emergency. When KD was on deployment, Zion was the one who showed up to fix the leak under the sink, who took Kingston to the barbershop on Saturdays, who brought groceries over and stayed to eat. At first, it felt innocent. Tametria was a woman alone, raising a child, juggling brand deals and Bible study. Her husband was thousands of miles away, living through sandstorms and sniper fire. The loneliness crept in quietly, like a fog. And Josiah? He was right there. With steady hands. A familiar voice. A presence that didn't leave her side. What started as long talks in the kitchen turned into stolen glances, into hands that lingered too long, into breathless apologies after crossing lines they swore they never would. But the guilt was fleeting. Their affair moved fast, quickened by adrenaline, fueled by secrecy. And by the time Tametria found out she was pregnant, KD had already shipped off again. She told no one. Not her mother. Not her pastor. Certainly not Josiah. It was 2019 when she took Kingston in for a quiet paternity test. The results were undeniable. Josiah was the father. She stared at the paper until the ink blurred through her tears. Her mind raced with scripture, shame, and what-ifs. But in the end, she folded the paper up, placed it in a locked drawer, and told herself the lie she needed to believe, that preserving her family was more important than the truth. That KD didn't need to know. That Kingston would be better off not knowing. That silence was a form of love. Josiah, whether he suspected or not, never asked. Never confronted her. Never changed. He kept showing up. Cutting Kingston's hair, bringing over pizza, watching KD's homecoming videos on Facebook with a forced smile. And KD? He remained the ever-devoted husband. Still in uniform. Still sending money. Still FaceTiming his wife and child with pride in his voice and love in his eyes, completely unaware that the boy he called son shared none of his blood. But secrets don't stay buried forever. And the one Tametria carried, the one Josiah quietly ignored, was growing heavier by the day, threatening to destroy everything they all pretended was real. August 2024 was supposed to be a homecoming to remember. KD had planned to surprise himself, arranging with his commanding officer to return 2 weeks early from deployment. Tametria, once she got word, took the opportunity to stage the ultimate Instagram-worthy moment, banners strung across the porch, silver balloons hovering like prayers, and the smell of slow-cooked oxtails drifting from the kitchen. When he stepped through the front door, in uniform and still smelling of sand and sweat, Kingston ran to him. KD lifted his boy, his whole world, high into the air and kissed his cheek. Tametria smiled through tears, camera in hand, capturing another viral reel for the followers who worshipped their black love story. Everything looked perfect. But 2 nights later, while Tametria slept upstairs and Kingston dreamed in his room, KD found himself at the kitchen table, unable to sleep. He poured a drink. Then another. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house. He remembered needing Kingston's school files, something about medical forms, and grabbed Tametria's laptop from the counter. It opened without a password. She always trusted him. That, at least, had been real. He searched for a folder named Kingston, but what caught his eye was one labeled Mama's Memories. The name sounded innocent, maybe even sweet. He clicked it open. What loaded shattered him. There were videos. At first, short clips, Josiah in the kitchen, Josiah pushing Kingston on a swing. Then one labeled July 2019. KD clicked it. Tametria was laughing, her legs wrapped around Josiah's waist in their bedroom, the same one where KD had once written his wedding vows by candlelight. Her voice moaned his best friend's name, again and again. Another video showed them on the couch, Kingston's cartoon still playing in the background. Another in the playroom, her back against the shelves of toy cars and plastic blocks. KD's breath turned shallow. His hand trembled. But it wasn't until he clicked on the PDF, titled Simply Truth, that the sickness truly hit. A paternity test. Lab official. Stamped. Scientific. Undeniable. Father, Josiah Trell Dorsey. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. Kingston, his son, his legacy, his heartbeat, was not his. He barely made it to the kitchen sink before vomiting. The bile burned. His knees buckled. His hands gripped the counter as his world collapsed around him in silence. He didn't sleep. He didn't cry. He sat in the dark, the gun from the bedroom safe in his lap. He didn't remember getting it. He just knew that by morning, nothing would ever be the same. At 6:12 a.m., Tametria descended the stairs in her satin robe, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The sun hadn't fully risen. The house was still cloaked in shadows. She paused when she saw him, KD, sitting still, elbows on knees, gun glinting in the half-light. "You lied to me," he said, his voice flat, barely human. "You let me love a lie." Tametria stopped cold. Her lips parted. Her face drained. "KD, let me explain." He stood slowly, the barrel of the gun rising with him. His eyes, once soft, once full of worship, were now hollowed out by betrayal. "You filmed it. In our son's playroom. You knew." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't want to lose everything." But he'd already lost everything. The truth had stolen it from him, ripped it out and left a crater. Something inside him snapped, a dam breaking after years of silence and sacrifice. The first shot hit her shoulder. She screamed and stumbled back, crashing into the stairs. He followed. Fired again. Her chest. Her stomach. The sound of the gun echoed through the home like thunder in a church. She tried to crawl, leaving smears of blood against the white walls. "Please," she gasped. "KD, please." He raised the gun again. The final shot went through her temple. The silence afterward was suffocating. Only the drip of blood down the stairs. Only the blinking LED light from the laptop still open in the kitchen. Upstairs, Kingston stirred in his bed but didn't wake. Down below, his father dropped the gun to the floor with a metallic clatter, knelt beside the woman he once swore to protect, and whispered, "You took him from me." And just like that, the internet's favorite love story ended in blood and betrayal, forever captured in a folder called Mama's Memories. For a moment, the house was dead silent. No cries. No footsteps. Just the smell of gunpowder and blood. KD stared at her, the woman he'd once promised to grow old with. Her face, now unrecognizable, was the end of a fantasy he had bled himself dry trying to maintain. Then came the soft patter of feet. "Mommy?" The tiny voice hit him like a hammer to the chest. Kingston stood at the edge of the living room, his Superman pajamas twisted from sleep, his wide brown eyes locked on the horror before him. He looked at his father, no, at the man who raised him, then at the mess that was his mother, lying in a pool of what used to be life. KD dropped the gun. His knees cracked against the floor as he rushed to Kingston. He pulled the boy into his arms, burying his face in the child's neck. The little body trembled against his, too young to comprehend death, but old enough to feel that something unspeakable had just happened. "You'll be okay, lil' man," KD whispered, over and over. "You'll be okay." Kingston didn't speak. Just held on. KD wiped the blood off Kingston's socks, muttering apologies. He carried him upstairs, dressed him in clean clothes, packed a small bag, and loaded him gently into the car. The drive to Teniasha's house, his younger sister, was silent. When she opened the door, KD didn't speak. He only said, "Take care of him. Please." And she knew something was wrong. Something beyond words. By 10:47 a.m., KD walked through the doors of the Killeen Police Department, dried blood still crusted on his forearms, streaks still on his cheek. He looked like a ghost, lost between this world and some dark place beyond. "I need to report a murder," he said softly to the front desk officer. "It was me." He sat down. And for the first time since the deployment, he wept. Not the kind of cry that asks for pity. The kind that echoes deep from the pit of a man who has lost everything. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours of KD's arrest, the headlines lit up screens across the country. Soldier murders wife after learning child wasn't his. Influencer slain in alleged paternity scandal. Tametria's name, once tied to beauty, faith, and family, was now stitched into tragedy. Her Instagram, once filled with sunlit devotionals and vibrant family reels, became a digital graveyard, followers pouring into post-heartbreak emojis, prayers, and RIP Queen tributes under her last reel. But the love was not universal. As details surfaced, the public opinion fractured. Old clips resurfaced, Tametria coaching women on how to keep their homes in order, quoting scripture about honesty and loyalty. Her critics pounced. Manipulative, they called her. Deceptive. Fake Christian. Every follower suddenly became a judge, sifting through her curated life for clues they missed. Some posted screenshots of her anniversary captions. "Thank you, KD, for leading our home with strength and grace," and paired them with vomit emojis. But it was the voice memos that ignited the true firestorm. During a forensic sweep of Tametria's phone and laptop, investigators discovered audio recordings she'd saved, likely as protection. Some were late-night whispers. Others, heated exchanges. In one, her voice cracked as she confided in Josiah, "I can't tell KD. He'll kill me. You know he will." That line hit like lightning. Then Josiah's voice, "I don't even want Kingston to know I'm his daddy. You and KD got it handled. Let's leave it that way." The memos painted a disturbing picture, one not of a cold-hearted cheater, but of a woman paralyzed by fear and trapped in a decision too far gone to undo. It also showed Josiah as an accomplice to the silence, a man who knew the truth and let KD raise his son without blinking. While he wasn't legally culpable, public rage fell on him fast. His barbershop was vandalized within 2 days. A protest broke out in front of his mother's home. Meanwhile, the nation debated. Some people rallied around KD. "He was betrayed beyond human comprehension," one tweet read. "PTSD. 3 deployments. Lied to for years. That man broke." Hashtags like #JusticeForKD and #PTSDIsrael began trending. Military forums erupted with support, calling him a cautionary tale of what happens when the emotional burden of service meets domestic betrayal. Even some veterans said they weren't sure they'd have handled it any better. But others were outraged. "You don't shoot someone 4 times for cheating," one influencer posted in a viral TikTok. "You pack your bags. You get a lawyer. You don't execute the mother of your child, even if he isn't biologically yours." Feminist groups called Tametria a victim twice over, once by a system that pushed her to stay silent, and once by a husband who acted as judge, jury, and executioner. Church leaders weighed in. Mental health advocates. Legal analysts. No one could look away. News anchors described it as a uniquely modern tragedy. The intersection of military trauma, influencer culture, black love narratives, and secrets too heavy to keep. And yet, in the center of the storm, one question remained unanswered: where did justice truly lie? Was it in the courtroom that awaited KD? Was it in the voice of a little boy who now had no parents? Or was it lost entirely, in the silence of a home where faith, family, and betrayal had collided in blood? The courthouse was packed for every day of the trial. Reporters lined the sidewalks before sunrise. Protesters held signs outside, some reading "Justice for Tametria," others reading "Free KD." The public was divided, but the law was not a forum for opinion. Inside, it was cold, controlled, clinical. KD walked in each morning dressed in a county-issued suit, eyes hollow, beard unkempt. He didn't look like the man from Instagram, the smiling soldier holding his son, the husband returning home to surprise his wife. He looked like a man whose entire world had collapsed in his hands. The prosecution didn't hold back. They painted a brutal picture, premeditated violence masked as a crime of passion. They walked the jury through the crime scene, through the bullets that pierced Tametria's chest, spine, and face. They showed the autopsy photos. The blood-stained carpet. The gun retrieved from the nightstand. They called it an execution disguised as heartbreak. He could have walked away, the lead prosecutor said. He could have filed for divorce. He could have confronted her and left the house. But instead, he retrieved a loaded gun, waited through the night, and shot a woman who begged for her life. Then, he aimed again. And again. And again. That is not a momentary lapse. That is not PTSD. That is murder. The defense leaned heavily on KD's military record. They brought in psychiatrists who described the effects of combat trauma, the isolation of deployment, the corrosive buildup of betrayal layered atop emotional exhaustion. One doctor said KD was in a dissociative state during the shooting, that his reality had collapsed under the weight of grief and rage. They reminded the court that he turned himself in. That he took Kingston to safety. That he never tried to run. This is not a monster, his attorney argued. This is a man who served his country, loved his family, and shattered when he discovered everything he built was a lie. Then came Josiah. His testimony was the most anticipated, and the most emotionally charged. He took the stand in a tailored suit, hands shaking as he was sworn in. I loved KD like a brother, he said, voice cracking. We grew up together. Ate from the same table. I was there when Kingston was born. I knew what we did was wrong, but I didn't know how to undo it. He choked back tears when Kingston's name was mentioned. I never wanted that boy to get hurt. I never wanted KD to find out like that. But the courtroom shifted when the prosecutor asked him, did you ever consider telling KD the truth? Josiah hesitated. No, he whispered. I was scared. We both were. The judge was stern, methodical, and visibly affected by the case. At sentencing, he delivered a heavy-handed message. What happened to Staff Sergeant Bell is tragic. He was betrayed, deeply. But we are not governed by heartbreak or impulse. We are governed by law. What he did was not justice, it was retaliation. It was the calculated execution of a woman who was on the floor, crawling, crying, and defenseless. For that, he must be held accountable. The jury found KD guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent when the verdict was read. No gasps. No cries. Just the heavy weight of finality. KD didn't flinch. He stood still, breathing through his nose, eyes focused on a spot on the floor. He didn't look at the jury. Didn't glance at Josiah. Didn't search the gallery for a familiar face. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outside the courtroom, Tametria faced the cameras with Kingston's hand in hers. She had stepped up from day one, handling funeral arrangements, therapy appointments, media pressure, custody battles. My nephew will never see that prison, she said bluntly. He will not be paraded into a visitation room to be told the man who killed his mother once loved him. I will raise him with truth. And I will raise him in peace. Tametria filed for full legal custody and petitioned the court to seal Kingston's name from future media use. He's not a meme, she told the press. He's not a lesson. He's a boy who lost everything. As KD was transferred to a maximum security prison in Huntsville, Texas, the world moved on. But Kingston would not forget. Nor would Tametria. Nor would Josiah, who now lived in self-imposed exile, isolated by shame and haunted by a child he could never claim without consequence. Justice had been served. But nothing about it felt like healing. This wasn't just a crime, it was a slow-motion collapse, a tragedy written in whispers, denial, and dangerous pride. Tametria wasn't perfect. She made choices layered in fear, vanity, and survival. KD wasn't a monster, but a man shattered by betrayal so deep it unraveled everything tethering him to reason. And Josiah, the friend who should have been a brother, became the spark that ignited the fire. But at the center of it all, Kingston. A child born into a web of lies, never asked to choose sides, never given the truth until it had already scorched his world. He didn't lose just one parent that night, he lost them both. This case will haunt anyone who dares to look too closely. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, about the fragility of trust, about what secrets cost when buried too deep, and about how quickly love can curdle into violence when accountability is abandoned. Could this all have been prevented if Tametria had come clean earlier? If Josiah had stepped up? If KD had walked away? We'll never know. But one thing is clear, silence is never harmless. It doesn't keep the peace. It only delays the explosion. If this story shook you to your core, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us as we uncover more chilling stories where love, betrayal, and human fragility collide with unthinkable consequences. Secrets don't stay buried forever, and when they rise, they demand a price.